Today, once again, I've got the awesome Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And if you aren't aware of Rick, well, there's a billion frickin' podcasts out there and recordings on the chap that he's done. And you go check out his website, richardallenmiller.com. That's ALAN. And you can go and check out the part one of this interview, the previous podcast from last week, to get some more details on Rick. We did a bit of an overview, but let's just get stuck into it. So I've got Rick here. And I'm going to bring him in, and yeah, we're just going to get started. So we're going to turn him on. And ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Hello, Rick.
Oh, wait, there it is. Live from New York.
That's you.
Yeah, that's one of the only things on TV that I still, George Carlson. Gotta leave George Carlson. Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's so good, isn't he? He's like, man, he cuts right to it. I'm surprised they let him up on stage for half of his jokes, because he was like, he's not even laughing.
Well,
he's trying to tell people what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our country, the world needs more humor. And we can just laugh them on. What do they say? You smile and the world smiles at you. But if you laugh, the world laughs at you.
I used to work with kids, and I'd be trying to make them laugh all the time.
It's got, humor on the Tree of Life. The Hebrew supposedly had, sciences with sound and shit like that. They assigned sound and words, and so their redundancy coefficient increased even beyond most languages. That's called redundancy coefficient. Avram Moles wrote a mathematical book on that called Aesthetic Perception and Information Theory. And in the Tree of Life, the two primary paths that go to God. What's that? I'm hearing an echo.
No, you're all good.
Is that an? Okay, well, okay. The two paths that connect to God from the outer path are the hermit and the lovers. You either do it androgynously. There you go. That's it. Good for you. And the hermit and the lovers, and you either do it androgynously or you find a mate in the physical world as a way of dialoguing with your inner self. And the path that connects those two in the pyramid part on the Tree of Life, going right through the Sea of Karansan or abyss, is humor. You'll laugh your way through this whole thing. It's not real. None of this is real. None of this is real. Like Google intelligence. What's real is imagination, and that's real. And that's why our children are possibly our single most important natural resource. And I don't know what your country's doing with it right now, but ours is squandering. They don't do cursive. Now they've stopped shop, mechanical drawing, home economics. None of that's being taught in school anymore. And worse, send them home early. Oh, and we might not open up in August, September. Now, what do you think that's going to do to our culture as a whole? How do we take this? I don't know if it's orchestrated. We know the virus is real. I had something. It was not that one, but I'm still on edge. I have phlegm. I'm lethargic. And something else is going on here. And black goo. That's what we'll blame it on. Black goo.
Black goo.
I don't know. Yeah. It's alive, huh? That's I don't know what's really going on. I do know that more people are being killed right now because of the fear than from the virus itself. Yeah, the concern, the change of behavior over my dead body. I'm not going to stop going to the zoo, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to affect everybody. And we all know that the world needed changing. It's just none of us are ever ready for it, kicking and screaming kind of thing. And so what you do, you try to take a look at what's going on out there and you try to figure out what to do next. Well, I was going to go to Dolly Parton's book reading, and they closed the theaters. And so I see in the papers here, they're gonna do a public reading on her now because the theater didn't show that one time only, last week. And Dolly Parton's cool. I from that point of view, I have to give her kudos. And a little poor us in Texas. Yeah, good luck. What I'm gonna do, the first lesson out of the gate, is I built a makeshift, quick and dirty aquaculture system, closed system that now is being used in a missile silo, 60 feet, run by 12 families that feed 2,000 people. And I'm going to do that as the first lesson. I teach a child how to build one of these things from scratch. We made a film on that 2 days ago, and we're now going to move it upstairs because I want it closer to the kitchen. Actually, the system could be run in a dormer like I have over the sink, but I don't think I'm going to do that. That's your end of town with Bill Mollison out of New Zealand. He did permaculture, and his concept in permaculture was that if your garden was more than 60 feet from your kitchen, you would use only half your garden. Now, the metaphor...
What's his name again?
Bill Mollison.
B-I-L-L?
Yeah, Mollison. Yeah, Bill Mollison. He started the permaculture movement. The reason he's well known, and it's got Shipholder and da-da-da, he broke the cardinal rule of sleeping with his students. gotta love it. Imagine being Indiana Jones, and she closes her eyes in the classroom and says, "Oh, I love you." Yeah, that's mudslinging, and it happens because women will project onto you, and it's not about you at all. Bill Mollison didn't know that, and he played. And what happened is he got a bad rap. At the end of his life, he asked me to help him because he wanted to teach here in America, and he ended up in Illinois. I got him a job in Illinois teaching because his concepts of permaculture are revolutionary in my humble opinion, and he's as important as someone like myself. Or he's permaculture looks at the environment as it speaks to you. Let me give you an example. I can look at a field and know more about that field by the weeds that it's growing than any soil map, aerial soil map that you might get. A Horizon 6, I have little layer maps. Those are called, that's Soil Conservation Service in America. And that, you get them on your property when you buy your land and so on. It's called soil maps. They're accurate, but the way a weed grows, festers down by the river or the lake or whatever, that tells you more about what kind of soils they are than an alluvial fan running down off a hill and showing how the minerals would have run over a century or two. And Bill Mollison grokked, that's a good word, grokked that concept and then wrote his monumental work on permaculture. He's from New Zealand. And in America, all your sustainable lifeboats, Oppenheimer Ranch Project, the Hoop-de-Doo, Doo-doo-doo, they all use permaculture now from Bill Mollison. They just don't mention his name.
Oh yeah, okay. That's
well, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Call a spade Blick, not black, because you're from Afrikaner. Just kidding. I think that there's something else going on here, and I don't understand this virus. I think I got something, but it wasn't that one, it was this one. I think there were several things happening at the same time, and they're experimenting with 5G. What do you think?
Well, I got to say, yeah, I heard that, and I've been following a little bit of the conversation about the link to the 5G. I mean, that's just, the whole thing is so suspicious, Rick, because we can see that the chap who got arrested at Harvard was dealing with 2 Chinese nationals who was exporting some kind of brown liquid in his socks. I mean, that was in the mainstream news at the end of January. This Dr. Charles Lieber, who's got ties to Bill Gates, and Bill Gates is part of this Chinese think tank. And then, of course, you've got Wuhan, where the virus originated, which is where they did the original 5G rollout. and China and all this. And I mean, they don't have to be necessarily directly connected, but it's just so convoluted, the amount of information out there, you know. It's very hard to find an underlying thread because they all seem quite plausible.
Well, then the correct way to answer the question is whatever you could conceive of as what happened is not only true, it's all true. Building 7, Pentagon, da-da-da-da-da, you know, Kennedy, Robert, the whole thing. Yeah. Plausible deniability. Yeah. Then, and I've been in war rooms. I've actually been that high up in the military. And imagine Dr. Strangelove. Sorry, when I mentioned his name, I go crazy.
I only watched that a few months ago. It's a good movie.
Oh no! Yeah, well, how are German Nazis? Yeah, huh? Oh, well, the little Nazis. Yeah. I can tell you, there's something else going on, obviously, and the spin is always the key. And that's why you spin your water differently than I do, because you're down under.
Right.
Coriolis forces. Well, you got to remember that. Stir your coffee counterclockwise.
Yes. Always. I even when I fill the bird feeder dish, the bird bath, I fill it and make the water circle around the other way.
You want to hear something more interesting? The sea between you and Antarctica is almost pure deuterium. That's why they mine it there.
Really?
Did you know that? Oh, that's where all the deuterium is between you and Antarctica. There's something else going on, and we don't quite understand. Water collects in different things. You know, when you have a waterfall and you have flowing water when it's hitting against each other, you'll get H3O7 with a free radical ion. That's a cluster water. It's called Willard water that Kerry Rames and others talked about. And that's why it feels good, because of that activated ion. You know, you feel good. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and oxygen. But structured water, that part is H3O2. That's hydrogen peroxide with another hydrogen molecule brought in. And that creates what's called a special kind of water called structured water that has memory to it. And you know, the interesting part about that is there's a 5-gram weight loss when you die. Everybody's the same. It's immediate 5 grams. What is that? Oh, yeah. Hammeroff and others have postulated microtubules, you know, outside the body, structured water in it. That could be a metaphor for the soul, where 5 grams of structured water is a million times more efficient than gallium arsenide, the computer chip you use in your computer. That memory, 5 grams, is enough for at minimum 100,000 lifetimes. We might be in a video game playing in the future where time is actually seen as correct as a duration of consciousness. It's not real. Neither is space, by the way. Space is a concept. That's why flat earthers can play. Is the world flat or round? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, physics starts out with assumed truth. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you say space is curved, I can, with simple mathematics, prove that the Earth's flat. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means I have choices. Do I want to go to door number 1 or door number 2? No, I want to go to door number 3 or whatever. But each one has its own accesses of universes. And that's what made us God's favorite. We have choice. And if you go to door number 2, you have a whole universe of things you can do, whereas door number 1, all you can do is fall off. You know, down there. And I can tell you that they're all real. I've fallen off, just FYI, with my sailboat. I hit a whirlpool once. That was creepy.
Where was that?
Huh?
Where was that?
Up near Alaska. And when I was a Boy Scout, I was yeoman. That's how I made Eagle. I had navigator. We did the outer straits with a twin-masted schooner with a sloop rig. And I tell you, man, we had a whirlpool up there. Oh, wow. I was going off the earth flat. There it is. There we go. No.
Damn.
Now, these anomalies is another New Zealander that wrote about those. Captain Cathay, Australian Air Force.
Bruce Cathy. Yep. No, we're aware of Bruce. Yep.
Real creepy people down there, huh? Agriculture, anomalies on the earth like black holes. And I actually did a study on the Oregon vortex we have right down the street here, and I used an interferometer at 10,000 feet, bending light 10,000 feet. Now, you tell me what we have in nature that would bend light that much. Size of a mini black hole. Means the Earth's being consumed from inside.
That's a bit creepy, isn't it?
And that's Captain Cathay's work, by the way.
Yeah, no, I've just had somebody in the chat say talk about your hat. Could you show us your hat and tell us about your hat a little bit?
Oh, my bald head! Oh my God! Sorry,
In God we trust. All others we monitor. Naval intelligence.
And there you go, buddy. That's what it's about. I don't believe anything.
And that's not related to Navy, is it? That's a separate.
Navy intelligence is not Navy. I remember when my dad was very clear about that. Dad was Navy. Oh, you're not Navy. You're I don't know what you are. I was a physicist that worked for Navy and why they ruled the waves. Shit! I keep doing that. I can't help myself.
We might be okay on Facebook. I know that YouTube are pretty strict about. Don't worry about it. It's all good, bro.
Navy intelligence was always about 10 years ahead of everybody. Army intelligence are men that stare at goats and the wrong one dies 10 years later. Well, that's the way I read it. Who knows? I worked with a smoking man, Dr. Carl Schleicher. And that dude was in the same office and the same desk for 48 years on Wisconsin Avenue. That's creepy.
That must have been a good dental plan.
Or he's an alien. I don't know. I do know I was Northwest. I worked under him. He had three people. Bill Franklin, Dr. Wilbur Franklin was at 10th State, and they did all the work in the Midwest in Chicago. Sorry, I like to call it Chicago. But Chicago has a physics lab that is got vaults underground, and that's where I did an artifact study there at one time. A couple of other things. Most everything I did was West Coast. I had China Lake and Argonne. I had Livermore, and I had SRI. I had access to toys, and when I had to do a study, we were A-Team, and A-Team never figured it out either. By the way, we caught a lot of flies and disbelief. I've seen things. I have no idea what they mean.
Go on, share a story with us.
What's that?
Share a story with us. Can you share one with us?
Well, I got the storyteller of the century here. Let me introduce you to a friend of mine. This is John Golden. Yeah, hello, John Golden. Storyteller.
How you doing?
Here,
good man.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Tell us about the book, man.
Well, I grew up in San Quentin prison. My dad worked in there, and at the age of 7 years old, we moved there. And at 22, 1972, I became a correctional officer. And after about 4 years, I saw a lot of injustice. So I started smuggling my camera, a Hasselblad CM 500, into San Quentin while I was on duty, shooting what I could to document prison culture. You know, in prisons, there's so much violence. American penitentiary system. People on the streets, they don't realize why. And it really boils down to the simple concept of not having adequate protective gun coverage. I mean, when you're in a prison setting, you've got gun rails, you've got towers, but a lot of this has been removed for various do-gooder programs. And the convicts in prison, they stab one another, both staff and inmates. So
you documented this in your book.
Yes, and basically the stories on the tragic stories that officers being murdered and inmates, and it needs to change. And you know, before I pass on, I want to get this out to the world about what goes on, because now it's global. It's going on all over the planet. So
yeah, we've got a situation here in New Zealand where we have private companies running some of the prisons, and you know, about 3 years ago, I think it was, there was a big media fiasco about you know, the guards were like allowing fights to happen or something, and I think there might have even been people betting on it, but you know, there's no oversight, and I don't know if the Freedom of Information Act can penetrate private corporations, even if they're working for government as government contractors and things like this. So with I think it was Serco, one of those, you know, monstrous juggernaut sort of like companies that they do civil construction and things too, but they own some of the prisons, or they run them. The thing is though, is that if they don't have people in the beds, they don't get paid as much. They get paid per prisoner. And what happens? And so what happens is they want to go and lobby the government to change laws so that they can get more people in the beds, because otherwise they don't make no money. If they've got empty beds, they don't make no money. So there's motivations at play here.
One of the big problems is once you have private prisons, like we have here in the U.S., there's no reason to close prisons. The more prisons you have, the more profit.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got to back out of this situation. We have to reduce the prison population. You know, I have doubts about the whole concept of incarceration. You know, how the idea came about with the Puritans, like back in 1829. And it was basically, the term rehabilitation, as I know it, means to return a man to where he was just before he lost his way from God.
Right.
A very religious concept. Well, good luck with that. You know, state-induced rehabilitation, in my opinion, is impossible. The only people that can rehabilitate themselves is themselves.
That's a great.
So if you, any of your viewers, just Google "Once Upon a Time at San Quentin."
I'll put that on the screen now. Once upon a time at San Quentin. And what's your name? Sorry, John.
John Wedgewood Golden. That's Wedgewood, WEDGWOOD.
John Wedgewood. Here we go.
Right.
Okay, I've just put that up on the screen for the moment while we're talking about it. Now, you know, you're right. I mean, you know, a lot of these people are actually committing crimes in a sense because they maybe have lost faith in the state, or they have no confidence in it. And so the state sort of taking over their rehabilitation process is almost like, I don't know, it's not quite the fox guarding the hen house, but it's almost like an oxymoron of sorts, isn't it? You know, here in New Zealand, the indigenous people of this country, some of them, of the tribes in the North Island, are actually trying to get their own sort of rehabilitation program, because basically these are people who have only sort of, they've only sort of been urbanized in the last 150, 160 years. And that takes a long time for people to adapt to this new culture that's just thrust on them. And so, the tribes in our country are petitioning to, have their own rehabilitation, because they want to bring these young men and women back to their roots, to their ancestry, so they can rediscover who they really are. Not this kind of this idea that's sort of pushed through television and media and things, where I think people get and it's just not one culture. It's right across the board, But I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to be, this is about the great work of self, isn't it? If we were talking on what Rick talks about, taking on the work of, sorting ourselves out to bring ourselves into some kind of alignment.
Right. The entire parole system started in San Quentin in 1899, which was a revolutionary concept at the time. I question even paroling inmates. I think if you release people, at some point they need to be released and return back to society, back to the streets with full rights. I've seen the prison just seems to want to hang on to people, let them on parole, and these things sound real good, but when you talk to inmates on parole, all the hoops they have to jump through, it's really quite a task. They throw them back into prison for nothing. The system just seems to feed on itself and wants to grow and grow and grow. In California, $75,000 per inmate per year is spent.
Yeah,
this is insanity. Down in New Zealand, I'm sure it's up there too.
And I'm sure that a large number of the people that are in there for the most ridiculous things. Was there actually somebody that was harmed? Who's the wounded party? How many people are actually hurting someone? Or of the nature. Whether it's getting caught with some cannabis or something like of this nature.
Right. When I was working in San Quentin, I was incarcerating inmates that did the same thing that I did. I just didn't get caught, and that was smoking pot, even selling pot. 60% of the inmates in San Quentin back in the 70s were in on nonviolent drug charges. Now it's 80%.
Man, so that's good money. Somebody's making some good cash.
Yeah. And here I am in Oregon growing legal cannabis, medical cannabis today, playing by the rules, and times have changed.
Yeah, and for the better too, because of all the things that people are chasing after, there's plenty of other trees and plants out there that do, harm without anyone actually smoking them. But we don't see a war on, plants. It's funny, it's like, if I would put a poster up in the main street and say, let's ban ants, no more ants. I'm going to write a letter to my MP to say, I want you guys to draw up some legal papers to ban ants because ants are a pain in the butt. It's like writing a petition to the government to say we want to block out the sun. We're upset with the sun. I think our perception of what rights are is a little bit has been corralled towards a certain understanding over time, and what Rick talks about and bringing in what you're talking about, really highlights the strangeness and the madness and the insanity of how we sort of run our systems and such. It's really just a breeding ground for more problems. It's not. I don't see it getting any better if we keep doing the same things.
Right. I would like to see a system. I call it the 4-strike penal solution, and it's a bit radical. It advocates for all felonies, convictions in California. You can do a maximum. You do 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, or capital. Now, probably in New Zealand, you don't have capital punishment, but in California in 2016, 53% of the voters voted to commence capital punishment. Now, yes, it's a brutal, ugly business, but when you talk to the relatives of the victims of serial killers and whatnot, they want these people executed. And personally, I see the biggest problem in prisons as long-term prison sentences. 1, 2, 4, capital, and acquittal. If you have that on your hand as a sentencing option, person does bank robbery, I would give them maybe 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, 1, 2, 4, no more. You take certain crimes, you take capital off the table, like auto theft, burglaries. The people decide this on what crimes you do 1, 2, 4 years and no more. But on real heinous crimes, like somebody kidnaps a child, they rape them, they murder them, they bury them in their garage. I think the majority of people want to execute these people. They're incorrigible. They're not coming back. So let's do it. 737 inmates today are on death row in San Quentin. We're creating a new prison within a prison. And our governor, Gavin Newsom, he's against the death penalty, and I respect that. But so be it.
Yeah, it's a very foreign concept to us here in New Zealand because we've never really had anything like that. We're one of the youngest countries in the world, and we're a British colony as well. And so, you know, we take on a lot of, well, you know, we were not always a colony, but the colonists came here, and so, you know, they integrated and basically invaded the country in a sense as well. But you know, the idea of you know, putting people on the chair or anything like that is a very foreign concept to us. And I would say, like, you know, we don't even allow nuclear ships into our harbors, although I've heard that is actually we do actually have a form of nuclear power here in New Zealand. It's just under very hush-hush situations. And I think that a lot of these understandings about New Zealand almost creates like a naivety amongst the people here to think, oh, you know, it'll never happen here. But you know, this idea of capital punishment, it's a very hard thing for us to discuss here because we have no concept of it. But you know, we've certainly had our fair share of heinous crimes, and the only problem that we have is that sometimes, you know, these things can stretch on for 10, 20, 30 years. Researching the things, we've had some of these and not get a result. And you know, it's like, you know, what if the person is not guilty, you know, and they get taken, you know, they have their life taken away from them. And so you've got to have, you know, it's so tricky. I mean, you've got to basically have a confession almost, don't you, you know, to make it real. Well, I would think so anyway, I guess. Something,
you know, I would go along with this. 1, 2, 4, no more, no capital. That would even work better than the system today. The real advantage, or the deterrent to crime, the only deterrent I've ever seen is social shock. An inmate goes into a prison, he's in shock. Oh my God, this place is unbelievably horrifying. But once 4 years pass, 3 years actually, they acclimate. They become part of the system. They don't want to go out on the streets. They become just totally gone. So fine, let them back out. You'll have more beds. I mean, if you don't want capital, then 1, 2, 4. My problem is with 20-year sentence, a 30-year sentence, a life sentence. Why are we warehousing people and never letting them out again?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, you know.
Yeah, there was a gentleman in Norway who murdered 72 children, shot them. He got 17 years. So it worked in Norway. In America, of course, the Americans would be outraged by that. But maybe in New Zealand, that would be more appropriate, probably life. But you know, they talk about taking a man's life when he's innocent. If you incarcerate somebody for life, you've took their life.
Yeah.
Whether you execute them or not, you've taken their life. And there are inmates that would rather be executed than spend a life in prison. So
well, we had a mass shooting last year in New Zealand, and approximately I think it was 51 or 52 people. Yeah, and this was the first for us. I mean, we've had some other shootings here before, but nothing like this. And the sentence has just been passed. And from what I understand, and I haven't got my information handy here, but I believe that, you know, he's not going to get murdered, but he's certainly going to be having a very long stay in an isolated situation. And, you know, that's just how we have to deal with that at this point, because, you know, the idea, I mean, we're only just we were supposed to have our cannabis legislation revised this year by vote, but because of what's happening with the coronavirus, that might not happen for a bit. But it's the idea of like, I mean, I can imagine the magistrates and the people in the judiciary sitting around going, how do we handle this guy? Do we because there's no precedent for this, and so as soon as you open those doors just a little bit to capital or something like that, once the doors open, they can be quite hard to close because there are some very hard-minded people that would want to push that kind of thing through, but this whole thing, like you said, about non-violent, who was the wounded party here, sort of thing is quite a relevant concept because. Why are we putting people in prison for a bag of pot? And what, oh man, we could talk about this at huge length, really, couldn't we? Because, we can see so many issues with the current systems. And I mean, it's not that different here in a sense to what's happening over there. Although you guys have got, in different states, you guys have got guns. We don't really have guns here. We don't have open carry. In fact, even to own a rifle is a huge bloody job,
Yeah, I understand you had some strict gun control after this last rash of homicides.
Yeah, we and there was a lot of we had semi-automatics pretty much taken off the shelf, and they were recalled. But I mean, we already know that there's already plenty of people with them. With these guns are coming into the country anyway. It's just that the public aren't allowed to own them. So the bad guys have still got the guns, but now the good guy, the public aren't allowed to own them, sort of thing. I know, and I guess that just makes us rely more on the state protection. More reliance on the state. So.
Right. Well, I think that's a big mistake. Also. So you want to get back with Rick?
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, John. I'll definitely put a mention in for your book.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother.
Well, he came over at 2 because we've been in quarantine, and he and I enjoy each other's company, barbecues, etc., and we haven't been able to do anything. I just got out of quarantine. I was in almost 3 weeks.
What, by yourself, isolated?
I'm still sick. Not. But I'm a prepper, so I'm a doctor prepper, actually. Just kidding. I'm good to
go. Okay. Hey, I've had another question from the chat, and would you like to answer a question?
Sure. Let's go for it.
Go on. Somebody is asking, and these are new people in the audience. Okay, so this is an audience you haven't reached before. So somebody is asking, what's the craziest, weirdest experience you've had? And I know you've got thousands of them probably. So.
Yeah. When I met Krill at level 8 at Broom Lake.
So what's Krill?
I can't get the memory. I back in the 70s. We knew about aliens, but at that time, psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain scared the bejesus out of everybody, and we were more interested in what the Russians were doing in the 70s. It turns out the Russians did not have the technology. They had Sputnik before we did, but that wasn't because they were high-tech. It means they were crazier than we. Going through the Van Allen belt, the reason they have a countdown, I've been at mission control when Ed Mitchell did it, they go 5, 4, 3. It's because just at the right moment before they launch the rocket, they blow a hole through the ionosphere so somebody can go through it and live. That's why we didn't do the moon like everybody said. It was delayed. You can't go into space. So that's page 1. What was weird was Czechoslovakia had technology we still don't have today. I can give you some examples of that later. But while I'm doing all this paranormal, which was more important than aliens at that time, that's why they had me doing that, was Krill. Nobody knows where he came from. But apparently, not Roswell, but like Roswell, there's a spacecraft, 2 dying aliens, 2 dead aliens, and a 3rd dying alien They did an autopsy, and then a fourth alien appeared and wanted the body and formed a treaty with Harry Truman to, this is all in Majestic, that formed a treaty with Harry Truman to replace the body, because trying to figure out what an organ does when it's not functioning is impossible. Like a liver, what does it do? Is it a filter? Is it a gut? Okay, you need someone living. So the living alien was at level 8, and that formed Broom Lake for years before Dulce or the other places were. And Krill was there for almost 30 years, and then one day he was gone. And he wanted to meet me. I don't know why. And so my assignment was to go to Broom Lake. I was not briefed on purpose. I had 1 hour with a bunch of top secret documents. I had vote permits, so I had top secret documents. I started reading. The door opened. And that's the last of my memory. Something happened. Well, it led me to write and do the work with Alan Frey on synthetic telepathy. How could I hear this entity talking to me without speech? I didn't understand how that worked. And that led me to this. What happened was, it was sexless. It was about 7.5 feet tall. It was sexless, you know, or had some kind of garment on it that didn't show sex. It appeared naked because it looked like a body, but it might have been a skill suit. I don't know. But it felt feminine in my mind. And then they debriefed me for weeks, trying to figure out what they saw. They found it was me and this thing at opposite ends of the room, and she might have been maybe 25 feet away from me, maybe. And we just stood there for I don't know how they say 40 minutes. And I can see it. I can't get to it. I can't, you know, like remembering who was that guy in the actor, you know, in that movie. Da, da, da. Oh yeah, I know who you mean. Either of you remember the name? It's like that. You can see it, you can't get to it. You can't get it over to the other side. There's a block. And my guess is, at some moment, they're going to release the Kraken. Oh, man. Who knows? Oh, it's a shadow. Shadow knows. Shadow knows.
The what? Who knows?
Shadow. Comic book. Sorry.
Oh, right.
Who knows what lurks in the hearts of man? The shadow knows. That was one experience that happened to me. Another was Antarctica.
Let's go there. Go on there.
What's that?
Go there. Go there.
Okay. I went to Antarctica. It was not one of my projects. I was hired as the physicist under an anthropologist that was going in to study the light and how the light worked in this cavern. And that will be in a book called Spook Central and the work I did on bioluminescence. It was an algae. It grows on walls. It's bioluminescent. It made it look like it. That cavern that I went in, we went in through Thor Island and in with a submarine. It's over a mile high. I saw the Nazi base. There was enough Nazi base there that's destroyed. We could probably fit maybe 19 subs.
Wow.
And then further down, there was a Viking base from the 14th century. Where's that in our history books? And even further down was a thing we couldn't study. It was a hole that went 100 miles straight down into the mantle. Now, at the time I was a physicist, even our helicopters couldn't do that. And as far as I knew, down that deep, metal, the heat gets to the point of being like plastic, you know, to take metal into the plastic system. And I heard recently that they started having all kinds of people, Buzz Aldrin, et cetera, going down to witness something. And then they restricted the island, curfew, abandoned. And what happened, what I think happened, They had technology to get down there and found something. What did they find? I don't know. I've talked to several of my friends, and they talk about Nephilim and instasis, and one of them woke up. Welcome to Baracha, honey. I have no idea what that all means. So, here's another one. There's physically more water on the planet Mars than there is Earth. What do you think of that?
You know, I think that I've seen a picture of what the Earth looks like without water, and it looks like a funky potato rock.
That is funky. It is, yeah.
It's not round. The Earth is not round. In fact, it's not round or flat, perhaps. It's both of those, but it's also like a funny.
Well, there you go.
It's like I'm trying to think of what it looks like. It doesn't make any sense. It almost looks like it could be like an apple core, but it's not.
That's why it wobbles. And the Hopi do the ritual of the wobble egg. I don't know. I can tell you this. One of my buddies at Jet Propulsion Laboratory says, the infrared signature, IR signature is wrong on Nibiru. And the other one said, yeah, it's probably got a Dyson sphere on it. And so what I did is I said, yeah, it's our future coming in to collect the rent.
Pick up the gold.
Yeah. Domes of Mars. That's what I wrote. That's another screenplay I've done.
You know, here in New Zealand, we've got Christchurch is our as a connection point to Antarctica in the southern hemisphere. It's one of them. I think the other one's like in Chile or Argentina. And you know, there's a lot of rich people, especially in the news in the last few weeks, that are moving to New Zealand and buying up land here. And, you know, there's a lot of high terrain and places that are hard to get to because, you know, New Zealand is like it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 islands. It's about 3 main islands, but it's built on the Pacific Rim of Fire, and it's got this huge alpine that runs down the South Island. So there's a lot of, you know, hidden stuff there. And I've heard that there is, you know, a lot of activity down here. We don't really see it in the city so much, but it's just interesting that, you know, we have this huge interest in people wanting to move to the South Island, which is also a main connection point to get to Antarctica as well. You know, you're talking about celebrities like, you know, John, what's his name, John Kerry and Alden and that.
Yeah, I think Hollow Earth theory and some of the stuff that came out of Russia. And listen, there are caverns that go from Maine all the way down to Florida without even having to go above ground. And I've got one cavern from East Evans Creek in Rogue River that goes all the way down into Highbomb, 4.5 hours on a motorcycle. Whoa, the Goonies are us. How did Johnny Carson put it? Next question. Those are the weird experiences. Next question.
Yeah, sure. You know what? What I really wanted to, I don't know how you're pressed for time. I'm still good to go. So you just let me know if you need to call it. But I've got some things I'd like to just ask you about.
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was just going to ask you, because I put it on the title card for this interview, let's talk about Magick, and maybe we can save a bit more of in-depth conversation for another time. But I'd just like to get, you know, I'd love to hear just like like a synopsis or an overview from you on your experiences with Magick. And I'm talking about Magick with a K, which, as we know, is the you know, the art of changing consciousness at will, or making or affecting change in the external world using the mind, so to speak. So if you could just speak to that for us, Rick.
Yeah, it's not sleight of hand like you're in your pocket. It's sleight of mind. Yeah, that's Magick was eventually reserved for the ultra elite of Europe for centuries. All your lodges back then were your famous writers, poets, Shakespeare, even Shakespeare for Francis Bacon, all of them belonged to lodges. Secret societies had secrets, you know, that place. And a cult means secluded. And that's because Christianity, you know, it's bad, you know, and you won't study, like, for example, altered states of consciousness and getting high because, it's not good. Okay, well, I have discovered that the laws of physics change with different altered states of consciousness. For example, in a place of hypnosis right there, your ability in guessing is 400 times over where you are in consciousness here. And I have watched a woman rip a car door off to save her daughter in a flaming automobile. And that's impossible. Her body isn't as strong as steel. How could she do that? And yet I've seen it. And that's why I'm going to suggest that altered states of consciousness are the realm of physics for this next century. And studying how you use those art form, that means it's a process. It doesn't mean it's a final thing. In other words, Simon says you can go halfway to the door. You focus on the door and you miss the journey. It's not, you'll never by that protocol reach the door. Process. Art is a process. It's not a final product. And the art, changing consciousness, will. Everybody does it differently. How did the Jesuits do it? Oh, yes. Bang, bang, and then to do things they can't do in conscious state. They used to whip themselves into a lather. And there are many different ways of Rome doing it. Drugs, like using them in psychedelics. I'm doing a project right now in Edmonton, business partnership with the country of Canada and the state of Israel, like psychedelic mushrooms for research and medicine. And guess what? Mushrooms, psilocin and psilocybin, are talking about norvobiosis and biocystin. They're toxins. They're very similar chemistries, but not the same as your neurotransmitters in your brain. And what happens is when you take this toxin, the brain freaks out and produces its own lookalike neurotoxin, lookalike neurotransmitter, excuse me. And that neurotransmitter could be a resonant cavity oscillator that's dialoguing with other bodies besides the physical body. And that's where psyche now goes from into matter, goes from 10% in your mind's eye up to 60. And that's what magic does. Magic is the art of doing that. How each of us would do it differently as a form of advanced form of physics. And I'm going to start with children because they don't know you can't do something. They'll do it.
That's an important point right there. They don't know that they can't do it yet until we tell them.
What an adult is about is he's experienced and knows what he can't do. That, by definition, is limiting him. And we conceive of what God could be, you know, create the world in 7 days. I'm guessing that's halfway to God, because that's all you can conceive. Like space and time aren't real. They're constructs in your mind's eye and the way you choose to see things. And in fact, they're limited. And how I can show that is, remember when I talked about the dolphin and their language, the form of Clifford algebra? That's part, when I did John Lilly's labs, I'm incorrect. What happened is, the last 2 months, technical paper came out describing the dolphins are not sending words, they're sending holograms of images, like John Golden's book, Visual, 1,000 words, in one paper. And the dolphin are sending holograms of images. We don't even have anything like that. Even Hebrew doesn't go there. That would suggest man doesn't have a clue. Just because we have a thumb and fire limits our form of technology. Oh yeah, we're in the epoch of fire, trial by fire. Watch what happens next with, you know, the grid going down in Fukushima, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, why isn't that more of a big deal? You know, like Fukushima's an incredible situation. Like the recent BP oil spill. I mean, the radiation of the ocean can't be scraped off the top.
Good. Oh my God. How's that tuna? Yeah, how's that tuna? Does it glow in the dark for you?
I don't eat
I
fish,
am very
yeah.
concerned about that. Yeah, nobody's talking about that. You want to talk about magic? It takes 1 full year to power a nuclear reactor power plant down, and there are 21 of those on the Daiichi-like reactors, all leaking. They're old GE, and they want to build more of them, and they're on the New Madrid fault line. And we have Yellowstone going. Oh, by the way, you see Yellowstone's lava as far as Ohio right now with tomography. You think the virus was a problem? Yeah, we don't have a clue, and we're on the brink now. With all of that said, it was also Joseph Campbell that said, when you see the kingdom of the Father on earth, the apocalypse has already occurred. It is perpetual, its potential. That's why I studied dimensional psychology. It's really interesting to balance it with my physics. So it's what do you got? 2 brains, huh? Science and religion and Malcoma in the middle. There you go. Yeah. 2 minds of this. We call it heads. That's Two-Face, the Batman. So there, I gotta move right along with the prophecies of Edgar Cayce and some of the other scallion. I don't know what's about to happen. I know that you can't prepare for all disasters, and IQ is survival coefficient. That's what IQ is actually measuring. It's not intelligence. It's sort of adaptability. How quickly can you adapt? And I see Orca has access to 9/10 of this planet, where man has only access to 1/10. Who's designed better?
That's a very good point, because we can't even really spend that much time out in the sun,
There it is. And today it went from being yellow to white. What does that mean? Well, let's see. There's no more insects on that cow pie. And my goodness, it's happening all around us, and we're focusing on the wrong things, maybe.
So where do you think we sort this out? When I read, you've given me a book to read at the moment. I'm reading Colin Wilson, which I'm having a great time with. It's been a while since I've read a book.
How about that chapter 6, the beast himself?
I'm not there yet. I'm not there, but can we affect change? Can we affect the change we want to see by doing the inner work? That's a really important concept.
We are all evolving. I'm a lead scout. I'm no bigger, and none of my things are original, because I am you, and you are me, and I am the walrus. That is archetypally the limitations of man, and I'm right in there with the rest of us. I have no illusions on what I am and what I am not. But I'm Popeye, the sailor man. I am. I know. I just like to play. Take your mind off.
Yeah. No, this is so great, Rick. I tell you what, man. Look, I'll start closing things up now, because we've been going for about an hour. And but if you'd like to catch up again, I'd really love to do another chat, especially where we can talk about some more of your books and things.
I've got a bunch of friends like John here, and they're all well. This is what makes me, is knowing people like him, getting his vision, integrating it with my own, and seeing the bigger picture. And I can tell you, it'll be our children that save this earth, not us. And so that's Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Wolf. Teach your children well.
That's really quite a key piece of information there. I heard something the other day, which was like, what sort of planet are we leaving for our children? But then there's also, what sort of children are we leaving for our planet?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. That fat got cut off. Use it as lard. I can tell you that our diet alone needed to have a wedge in quick, because everybody in Oregon is obese. The diet. How did Jay Leno put it on Dorito cars? Don't worry, we'll make more.
Hey, you want to? I'll tell you something. So we've just come out of our level 4 lockdown here in New Zealand, and so basically everyone's been quarantined at home in a sense. Now, they've just gone to level 3 yesterday, and there were people parking up at McDonald's at like 3:30 in the morning waiting for the fast food chains to open. And there was like, there's these huge fucking queues, man, and they go like all the way down the main roads of people queuing up for hours to get their fast food.
Steve Miller, that's his fault. Cheeseburger. No, yeah, living in the USSA. There it is. I got to do humor. I can't get serious about this because if I did, I'd be paranoid. Wait, I am paranoid. Yeah, it's gonna be chilly out there. You guys, I've noted, are more extreme than America because you don't have as many weapons.
We don't. We've had a whole bunch of them taken off us as well. So,
you want to know something that is a good weapon? It's a water pistol with ammonia in it. That works. See him try to outlaw that. That'll stop a rabid dog. Squirt, 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 squirt.
Well, it's funny. You're not. It's funny because I talk to people about this kind of thing, because in Japan, when the Japanese people had their weapons taken away from them, this is how karate came about. It means way of the empty hand, karate do.
No, well, that's because they also are more compliant than any race I've ever met. I mean, they will allow that kind of crap to happen. I looked at what they did to Hong Kong, China, and during the war, and kamikazes. And Midway. No, I think the world's changing, and I think that we have an opportunity to change some of the things that were wrong, like food production. Yeah, exactly. And we start there as a metaphor. And once you do that, you've already won, because it's about the moment.
And on that, you did a talk many years ago where you showed a study about how the food can affect the mood of rats, and how some of them would go into, actually become depressed by eating certain things. And I mean, that's a reality that most people are aware of, but they have this almost cognitive dissonance where they'll still go and get that thing that makes them feel bad. It's almost like an addiction to
substance. When she sang, I love rock and roll. And then Tina Turner had to come in and sing, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" Rock and roll. That's what there's something happening now. And I think that it's not like an awakening, but, that's one way of looking at it. I think that everybody's getting it, the need for change. And I think I'm going to try to do thing towards children is another footprint I'm doing. John Golden's concepts of prisons, diverse penitentiaries is essential, and to hell with big business. That's as far as I'm concerned. Prison systems here in America are terrible. I had a friend, they couldn't get anything on her. They wanted her so bad. So what they did is they locked her in with someone that had tuberculosis. They got her that way.
Oh man, yeah. They get you in it's about putting you in containment, isn't it? Like we've got you now. We'll do with you what you please, and you might be useful to us later.
And who knows what else I can get out of your pockets?
Yeah. But anyway. Exactly. Oh, okay, Rick. Well, that's probably a good place to call it. There. Is there any? Would you like? Have you got a stunning?
I enjoy you, Phil, and you're fun. And this technology thing we're doing is always interesting because I'm growing on why I don't want to use Google. Just kidding.
I'm gonna find a way to do it around the Chrome thing. But yeah, have you got a good quote to leave us with?
I've written 4 new books, small books for children, on the magic of water, and I've done this one on how to grow food, and their stress management is going up. It's workbook 5. I've got workbook 1 and 2. 3 and 4 are going to be about a mobile water testing laboratory run by children. I think that's where our future is, and workbooks are going to be the workbook 5. Yeah, that one there is the first one, and workbooks actually give you exercises specific. And I've got 12 volumes on pathworking that I haven't released on how to change the movie. Malkuth, Yesod, all of the different Sephiroth, in detail on how to manipulate that part of the movie. And when you do that as a hologram in ritual, now what you're doing is you're celebrating the myth. I've got a whole new way of approaching magic, and I'm the physicist that didn't blow himself up.
I can't wait for that.
I'll send you, I'm going to include you in an email on some of my historical background in magic, and we can get specific with OTO, AA, Order of the Silver Star. Phyllis Seckler was married to Grady McMurtry, and Shay and Helen Parsons Smith, Jack Parsons, Wilfred Smith, and Mildred Burlingame were the three witches of Endor. When Phyllis saw me doing Tai Chi, she decided I was going to be her protege and, you know, supersede her husband as Caliph. And I turned it down. And they was then given to Breeze out of New York with Grand Lodge. And he then moved everything to Berlin 1 year before 9/11. But magic is an extremely important, rigorous discipline. It is a way, not the way, a way of changing the movie A, B, C, and D. You know, you just go right down the line, and it works, just like it did for Fellini. All hail Eris, all hail Khaleesi.
Good on you, bro.
That was Robert Anton Wilson. Yeah,
haven't read him yet.
Bob was only 13. And by the way, he used me, he and Simon used me as, I'm Simon Moon in all those books. The one that's teaching all the little, I'm Mr. Natural showing Susie Cream Cheese how to do it.
What book is that?
What?
What book is that?
Did you get all of that? Those are comic book characters. I love comics. I grew up on comics. That's where I got all weird. I didn't care much for the superheroes. What I liked were the down and outers like Constantine. You know, Hellblazer. He's trying to stay alive so he doesn't go to hell, because that's where he's going and Satan's waiting for him. That's Christianity. I'm kidding. You know, actually, this purgatory, I can see why they call it purgatory. It's not real. And it's one of Dante's 7 levels. All the way we look at everything and the way people are with each other. We're coming from a place of wounds rather than a place of purpose. And once you get the distinction on that, is when you become finished coming out of the flame. It happens for each of us. That's what magic did for me. Open third eye. Metaphorically.
That's so cool. Oh, that's it. Well, that's a great place to call it there, Doc. So I'll encourage everyone to go check out your website, richardallenmiller.com, with ALAN being the middle name. And please go on there and check out the books. I'm having a fit just thinking about all the different damn books. I've got a stack of them here on magic, herbs, agriculture, how to train your mind. Oh my gosh, how important is it to train your mind right now, right? If you're stuck in isolation, people, you want to start learning how to meditate so you don't start slipping off the damn cracker, okay? And you know, if you've got an interest in metaphysical topics, Doc Ram's website is just freaking a great place to start. He's got thousands of interviews online, I'm pretty sure. Check it out. And let's get the Doc back on again soon, because it's always just a freaking good time, right?
Well, that's what it's supposed to be about. You're supposed to feel like something's happening here. Oh, wait, is this my house burning down? Oh, Talking Heads was an exceptional band and captured that moment. I have met him. I love music. Yeah, I worked 20 years at the Brit. Look that up, BRITT. I worked 20 years there as a volunteer, because music is my life, man. That is what renews me. I'm a jazz man, but everybody's got a different tone. And the reason you meditate, this is the most important theorem I'm going to say today. Man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. You start to think about something, it'll happen. Watch it.
Yeah, that's great. All right, brilliant. That's a really powerful point there. You know, man has a responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain, because if you're not managing your thoughts, who is? You know, who are you letting into the gate, right?
Yeah, they spin the alternate media once they control. On TV. All right. Good luck with that, man.
That's right.
Well, the media, I remember when it was Charles Kuralt and Walter Cronkite, and then Dan Rather came in, and now we got it's bullshit.
It is a bit scary.
None of it's real. It's nice being with you again, Phil. How did I remember The Prisoner. Be seeing you.
Be seeing you. And thank you to John too for his time. Thank you, John. It was lovely to talk, and thank you for showing us the book. And I'll put a link to all the stuff in the description in the YouTube when I send you guys the YouTube link. Thank you both, gentlemen. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. I very much appreciate your time, and let's catch up again soon.
Take care, you guys. I'm going to go now.
See ya.
Bye.